but they were stopping 30% fewer times. They were stopping 5.
should go like this too. Everyone shakes his head.
I'm going to call this subcommittee meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Cannabis Control Subcommittee. Mr. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Counsel Drinkwater.
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Robinson.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This meeting is held as a result of a motion that was made at the last Cannabis Control Subcommittee meeting. Motion made by Councilor Robinson to further discuss the process for awarding host community agreements at the city level for marijuana retail and delivery as well in cultivation establishments, and the current criteria or preferences within that process for awarding those agreements. Additionally, as part of that motion, we will discuss tonight a state pilot program that was put in place or will be put in place to potentially permit social consumption lounges. So with that, I also want to note that we are joined here in the chamber by Councilors Yem and Mercier, as well as from the Department of Planning and Development, Giovanni Baez-Rose and Francesca Sigliano. I did want to, before we open it up, just ask Ms. Sigliano to give a quick summary of the process that has been in place for awarding host community agreements. We obviously have a number of these in place for the retail and cultivation establishments, and there has been a previous motion response from August that did summarize some of this, but could I ask you, Ms. Sigliano, just to kind of give a brief overview of the process to date?
Sure, thank you, Counselor. If we could just get the motion response pulled up on the screen, that would be great. But I'll start. So a host community agreement is a contract negotiated between the city manager and a marijuana-related business seeking to open within a municipality. The city manager ultimately decides whether or not to execute the contract, but the DPD's role in this is that we interview a prospective business and review their business plan and consider the proposed location and provide a recommendation to the city manager, who then chooses to execute the contract. At the state level, with respect to social equity, the Cannabis Control Commission has opened delivery licensing, so for marijuana delivery and courier businesses, exclusively to social equity and economic empowerment applicants for a period of 36 months from the date the first delivery operator licensee receives a notice to commence operations. So basically, social equity and economic empowerment applicants have exclusive access to these licenses for delivery and courier businesses for at least 3 years. And then at the municipal level, with respect to social equity, the City of Lowell currently gives preference to women, minority, and or veteran-owned businesses when reviewing HCA applications. But the Cannabis Control Commission has a whole list of other things that they suggest municipalities pursue if they want to further advance social equity when reviewing and choosing whether or not to execute a host community agreement. One of the suggestions was the recommendation that municipalities alternate signing HCAs with economic empowerment applicants and non-economic empowerment applicants. So if there's a fixed number of HCAs that you wanted to execute, half of them would be for non-economic empowerment applicants and half would be for economic empowerment applicants. They also recommend evaluating the company's diversity plan and their plan to positively impact communities disproportionately harmed by the industry in the past. They also advise cities and towns to consider whether caps on the number of establishments are necessary. Currently in the city of Lowell, we have a cap of 5 for retail establishments, but we do not have a cap for cultivation or labs, which are the other 2 types of uses that we allow here currently. So the council may consider for delivery to not have a cap, and also can consider removing the cap for retail, because the CCC argues that when you have a fixed number of HCAs that you will issue for a certain type of marijuana business, those that are first in line to and have all their materials ready and the resources to be prepared to submit an application are probably going to be those that have more resources and are more politically connected. So it puts maybe like a newer business owner with less capital at a disadvantage. So that's something for the council to consider as well. The council may also wish to explore the possibility of expanding the number of zones that allow marijuana-related businesses. Right now, marijuana-related businesses are only permitted in the regional retail, high-rise commercial, office park, institutional, light industrial, and general industrial zoning districts. But it may make sense for the council to consider whether certain marijuana uses are appropriate for some mixed-use districts within the city, so some of our neighborhood corridors, the downtown mixed-use zoning district, because the zone that allows marijuana uses, the zones that allow marijuana uses are confined to small geographical area of the city. And finally, the CCC advises against setting arbitrary buffers that restrict the locations of marijuana businesses. The state requires a minimum 500-foot buffer from K through 12 schools, but within the city, at the city level, we have a 1,000-foot buffer in between retail establishments. So we only allow a retail establishment every 1,000 feet, and that's not a state requirement. So the state advises against implementing too many of these restrictions with respect to locations. And so I'd just like to open it up to the council. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions, and thank you for the comprehensive summary. At the municipal level, you had mentioned that currently the city does give preference to women, minority, and/or veteran-owned businesses, which is certainly a good thing, and something that personally I think should continue. Specifically, how, in terms of is there a rating system? Is there a matrix? Like, how exactly are those factors weighted when considering an overall application? And is that essentially codified anywhere? I know obviously that the Office of the City Manager has a lot of power and leeway sort of to determine how the process for awarding the agreements happens. So is that system of preference kind of written anywhere, codified anywhere, and again, sort of how is it weighted ultimately when these decisions are being made?
Yeah, my understanding is it is a matrix, and there are records of how each of the businesses were rated. This is mostly applicable to the retail HCAs because there were only 5 that we were going to issue, so it was really carefully considered in conjunction with all of the other criteria, like their business plan. But this mostly has to do with the retail businesses, but it was documented. We still have those records, and we can provide them if you want that.
Thank you. Just want to quickly note, we've also been joined here in the chamber by Councilor Getchier, and I neglected to mention earlier, we are joined by Attorney McKenna as well from the Law Department. Want to open it up to other questions from the subcommittee. Councilor Robinson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe this might be a question for the Law Department. On a municipal level, are we allowed to expand part of the HCA, the exclusivity period, on, the first 36 months, because it's probably going to take us a little bit of time to get up and running. Would we be able to adjust that for our own community and maybe start the 36-month clock on our own from the time we're prepared to issue the first one? That would be my first question. The second, and again, this might be something for the law department also, is would we also be able to look into adding a residency kind of preference residency preference as part of the HCA agreements on the application phase, where they would be receiving additional credits through that vetting process before they even get submitted over for review? Thank you.
So, in response to your first question, given what I've read on the CCC's website, I do believe we would be able to extend that 36-month window. Given that they suggest that we alternate between social equity and economic empowerment and non-social equity and economic empowerment, I think that my understanding is that we are empowered to do that, but we would obviously have to consult with law. And then I'm not sure about the residency question. I think that was also considered with when the interdepartmental group reviewing the HCA's for retail. I believe that was one of the other characteristics that was included in the matrix. So I would think that we would be able to have strong preference or restrict to residents, but again, I would defer to law.
Thank you. And just to follow up based on the conversation, I'd like to make a motion for whether the subcommittee or full body to examine expanding the zoning on the current, pretty much all the zoning surrounding this industry, because I think if that's a recommendation the state is advising on a municipal level, people take a look at, I think it's worthwhile us having a conversation.
So I'll provide a second to that motion. I know that issue has been before this subcommittee. I know there's been a previous motion response that laid out the process for expanding upon the number of retail establishments, that also mentioned that the subcommittee or council may want to revisit the zoning, and I am definitely on board with doing that. Maybe if it's okay with the maker of the motion, I would maybe just suggest that we get a report back from DPD on, I don't necessarily want to call them recommendations, but potential options in terms of how we may be able to, what zones we may be able to look at in terms of further allowing retail to take place, if that's an acceptable amendment to the motion.
Absolutely. So what will the motion be, if you want to just clarify?
Sure, I'll restate it. So motion to request a report from DPD on options for expanding zones under which retail cannabis establishments are allowed, and further discuss expanding the number of retail HCAs available in the city. Does that make sense?
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I'm going to pause on that, so I'm going to vote no.
Okay. So let the aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Okay. So that's motion carries. Let the record show that it was not unanimous with Councilor Leahy as a no. The subcommittee will meet at a future date to can have a discussion on the topic. Certainly, the motion doesn't commit either the subcommittee or the council to take any action, but just an opportunity to further discuss the issue. Motion on the floor. At this point, I want to open it up to questions or comments from other members of the council who are present. Seeing none, I did just want to follow up with another question related to the process for considering HCA applicants. So, in addition to a number of the issues that are considered, namely women, minority, veteran-owned businesses, I know we mentioned tonight as a possibility, residency as a preference. The other thing that I have seen come up in some localities is essentially issues that relate to employees, whether it be wages, taking into account whether a potential or an applicant as a potential employer would commit to paying, for example, a living wage, could be defined as 100%, 150% of the minimum wage, whether they commit to offering health insurance to their employees. Factors such as that. Also, there's actually been a move for employees in this industry to unionize and work under collective bargaining agreements, and there have been preferences or requirements put in place that applicants operate under labor peace agreements, which essentially means doesn't commit them to, or any employee to being a union employee. What it does is a statement from the employer to remain neutral. If the employees wish to organize a union in their workplace, just means the employer will essentially stay out of the election process. So I did, and I'll actually make this in the form of another motion and ask the law department to maybe just get back with a report to the subcommittee on what the process would be, or if there's a pathway for the council to issue guidance to the administration on further considerations or preferences given to host community agreement applicants, similar to what was just named. So we'll say, local residency, living wage, labor peace agreements as some examples. And I think it would just be good to get a report back on whether the city council can ask for preference to be given in that process on those or other factors. So I guess motion on the floor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. So at that point, I'll just give, also note that there are members of the public here in the chamber tonight. I want to open up the opportunity for any members of the public who desire to speak to do so. I'll ask that first, if anybody wishes to speak on the host community agreement process, that you speak on that topic. Once we close that topic of discussion, I know we have another agenda item tonight just to discuss the potential or the state licensing process for social consumption lounges. So before opening up that part of the discussion, I just want to open it up to any member of the public or anyone else for any closing comments or questions on the host community agreement process. All right. Seeing none, we will close that portion of the meeting and open it up for discussion. Again, this agenda item was a result of a motion brought forward last week by Councilor Robinson, just to, I think, hold a discussion on the topic. There, I believe, was state legislation passed that opened a pathway to the potential permitting of what are considered social consumption lounges, and we'll open this portion of the meeting up for discussion. Is there any discussion? Councilor Robinson.
Thank you. So I guess I would just request from DPD report back as to what a recommendation would be as to at least get prepared and get ready with community involvement to see if consumption lounge is something in the future that the community would be in favor of. And maybe a report back, including the election office if need be. Thank you.
Councilor Robinson, I have to admit, if that comment was directed towards the chair, I was distracted at the moment. Were you looking for a response on that?
No, I just, to repeat myself, I just requested, maybe through DPD to provide a report back or some guidance as to how we could consider a path forward with the consumption lounge with community input and maybe some involvement from the election office if need be as well. So just what would be the path to get in line when this is sanctioned by the state?
I think that'd be great. From my understanding, and that there was legislation or language included in some legislation relative to social consumption lounges. From my understanding, it's really, there hasn't been any sort of regulations or even an actual program put in place to start the process of licensing. So I think it's relatively early in the game, if I'm not mistaken. I'll open it up to see if there's any further information on the state process from DPD.
Yes, thank you, Counselor. To quote correspondence from the Cannabis Control Commission, they said, while cities and towns now have the ability to opt into allowing social consumption, the commission does not have a time frame for when the agency will roll out the social consumption application or the pilot program. So we could certainly look into what the process would be to opt in and do some community engagement related to that. And we can absolutely stay in contact with the CCC about this, but it sounds like they don't know what the application process is going to look like, nor do they know what the pilot program application will look like. So.
Yeah. Councilor Robinson.
Thank you. I'd like to put a motion forward, just a report coming back as to specifically what is required for the city of Lowell to opt in.
Second. Motion.
No.
Comment on the motion from, is that Councilor Yem?
Just a quick questions. My question would be the definition of consumption lounges. So is that including bars and restaurant and stuff like that? Thank you.
I'll go to Councilor Robinson to respond.
My understanding, the way the state has discussed and crafted anything around consumption lounge, it's not allowed alcohol and consumption of cannabis in the same facility and location. It's more or less a social club that allows the consumption of cannabis on premise, and it would be a public location. There's one that's operating in Worcester currently. They require a membership, and again, there's no selling or usage of alcohol in the same building, so it's completely separate. So it would only be like a social club, kind of similar to the cigar bar, and they're not allowed, as far as I know, to sell cannabis either. So the patrons arrive with their own cannabis and consume publicly at the location.
Thank you. Just to follow up, I'm not sure what the state would say, but if I go similar to a bar or restaurant, I get something to eat, and instead of drinking alcohol, after my meals, I would just smoking. Is that something? I'm not sure. Is that some of the It's just a thought. You know, we go to a restaurant or bar, we have something to eat, we have a drink, a few drinks and stuff like that. Would that lounges be like that? Because I read some article and there was a tendency that they want to kind of go that direction. So just I'm thinking out loud. Thank you.
So yes, that's how the one in Worcester is currently operated. It's, you go there, you can get a bite to eat and consume cannabis, and there's no alcohol.
Councilor Mercier?
Yes, thank you. So on that same thought, let's see if I got this straight. If I today or whenever went into a restaurant and got a meal and afterwards I went into my pocketbook to get a pack of Parliaments, I can't smoke that there, but yet they're going to try to establish it so that you could have a marijuana cigarette? I don't get it. I don't understand that. It's the same thing, you're smoking or whatever. It's all right to do one and not the other. I just don't. I don't want to go any further with any comments. I'd be thrown out of this building probably, but anyway, that's okay. Sorry, I don't get it.
So the state has crafted this already, this model, the consumption lounge. The whole premise of it is, it's not like going to a restaurant where you pull out a cigarette and smoke after, because the initial premise of this business is you go there to consume cannabis. So the food would be an afterthought. It's heavily regulated by the state, and that's why only 12 communities are going to be allowed to hold a pilot program for a 3-year period, and they're going to do studies around the data surrounding these to see if this is going to be something that goes full scale online. But with us being the 5th largest city in the state, it only makes sense that we opt to at least take part of a 3-year pilot program with the state. And they're going to have their thumb all over this because, again, it's a pilot program, so the regulations are going to be very stringent as far as what they allow with these type of businesses. And again, one of the things is no alcohol served or used on premise. And the restaurant component, that's still not clear from the state, from what I've been reading, whether it's going to be same location or it'd have to be separate. So the whole premise of these consumption lounges, cannabis consumption lounges, would be, the draw is people that might have gave up drinking alcohol. They want to go out to a lounge and they choose to take part in cannabis. It would provide them the opportunity to go to a social lounge and use, because currently people are using socially anyway, so it's just another opportunity for the city to provide an establishment for people that might choose that for recreation.
I hear what you're saying, but I remember many years ago on Hurd Street in Lowell, there was a hookah bar, and they were run out of the city, just so you know.
So I just want to note here that the actual policy of whether or not the city would want to opt into such a pilot program would be a question to be addressed down the road. The motion that was approved by the subcommittee would really just be to get a report on the process for, opting in should the council choose to at a later date. So I think there's a lot of discussion that would need to be had and should be had. Should we eventually consider whether to opt in to such a program? But I think in order to do so, we would certainly just need to know the process that it would take to opt in at a local level, and then whatever the process would be for a business to get licensed at the state level. So I certainly appreciate all the the questions that are being raised on whether or not it would be a good idea to opt in, but this would be that would be a question to be certainly addressed and considered down the road.
Just
Councilor Yam.
Just one last comment. I would support the motion to have low opt-in for the lounge, for the consumption lounges. But I would also have us, the city of Lowell, look at Worcester, how they do it, they operate it, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but learn it from what they've done in Worcester. Thank you.
I got ahead of myself. We had, this is discussion on the motion on the floor, just to get a report on the process for opting into the state pilot program. We haven't yet taken a vote on that motion. So any further discussion on the motion? All right, with no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Before we close out the meeting, is there any further discussion, whether from members of the body or members of the public, related to social consumption lounges? Yep. Please step up to the microphone. Please identify yourself for the record.
Sure. My name is Joseph Schelsey. I work at the Wellman Farm facility here in Lowell, and I've been to the Summit Lounge in Worcester, and I can tell you that there's not a lot of food served there. It's more of a social opportunity for people who are interested in fellowship, you know, and meeting with other people, and part of the socialization is sharing and smoking cannabis. And there have been some events that have had food, but that's not, you know, you keep thinking about it or mentioning that you're thinking that it's more like a restaurant. It's more of a cigar bar, I guess. I've never been to a cigar bar, but the facility in Worcester snuck in under the wire. The family, you know, tried to. They did it. The city of Worcester allowed them to do it prior to the state having any regulations regarding this, and the city of Worcester allowed it, and so the Cannabis Control Commission didn't shut them down. And it has been moving ahead successfully, and they're still in business. I don't believe there's been any problems with the facility. And to the question about cigarettes and cannabis, I know there hasn't been a lot of research done on cannabis, but there has been a tremendous amount of research done on cigarettes. And cigarettes are outlawed because they're poison. I mean, it's just that simple. They're outlawed because they're poison, and marijuana is being legalized because it's seen as being medicine, it's seen as being medicinal. Cigarettes are carcinogenic, and they're also very toxic. The body takes the alcohol and turns it into a neurotoxin that if you drink too much of it, it'll kill you. If you drink a little bit of it over time, it's going to kill you too, because it's a neurotoxin that is very bad for your body. Marijuana is a neurogenerative substance. I know there's not a lot of research that supports that, but in the United States, there's not a lot of research. The Israeli government and the people in Israel have done a lot of research on this, and they have more research on it than the U.S. has. And it's a fact that it's a neurogenerative substance, and that we have a cannabinoid system in our body that people didn't know about. You know, nobody knew about it until the 1985, I believe it was, when an Israeli doctor discovered that we literally have a system in our body called the cannabinoid system, that system makes cannabinoids similar to CBD, THC, and the other cannabinoids. And the system helps us to regulate our bodies, and without it, we would die. And so it's not the same as cigarettes, it's not the same as alcohol, it actually is, if it's abused, it's like anything, it can be abused, and it's not good in that case, but it, in and of itself, it's not a bad herb, I guess, is how I would refer to it. It's an herbal medicine, and I think that it's starting to be seen in that light, and I would encourage the city of Lowell to involve themselves in this in the sense of learning more about it, like you're talking about doing. And I think that you'll find that overall it's going to be a benefit for the city, and that it's not just going to be a financial benefit for us, it's also going to be a benefit for the citizens of the city of Lowell. You don't hear about the Summit Lounge having, you know, violent episodes, fist fights, you know, all kinds of crazy violent things. But you do hear about those things with regard to alcohol and the way that it affects people. And so I guess, you know, I'm just glad to hear that the council is talking about these things and trying to learn more about it. And I think that it's going to serve the city well, and it's going to serve the citizens of the city of Lowell well, as long as, you know, we have enough safeguards, I guess, in place to be able to protect people. And I think that that is something that I'm happy the city is doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shelsey, for your comments and insight. But before we adjourn this subcommittee meeting, want to go to Councilor Robinson for one more comment.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the speaker. Again, we're talking about something that's been stigmatized for quite some time. The legality of it is fairly recent, and I think there are some growing pains that are going to come along with it. I myself have been to the Summit Lounge. I have a friend that actually teaches out of the Summit Lounge once a month. And what that does is we have residents that actually utilize cannabis for an alternative medicine. And one of the things Summit Lounge brings a big draw in once a month is education, community outreach and education. They're actually teaching people how to grow this medicine for themselves, and because it's legally allowed. And so instead of hearing bits and pieces or trying to Google, they actually do walk through classes, provide people with the setup, and take home instructions as to how to grow that medicine for yourself. So, I mean, again, as the speaker mentioned, I think if nothing else, these conversations show that Lowell's willing to be open-minded and to think outside the box and listen to the residents. If the will is there of the residents, we're all ears, and we'll have civilized conversations, put the safeguards that need to be in place so everybody's on the same page, and we have a great team working with this. So I appreciate the speaker, and I appreciate my colleagues, and let's keep these conversations going. Thank you.
Thanks to all for the comments here tonight, and there'll be plenty more to discuss at future meetings of this subcommittee. We gave everyone's got work cut out for them with other motions that we'll have to consider at a later date. So with that, and getting near the time of the full city council meeting, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Meeting's adjourned.